It's online. One thing I wanted to tell you is that everything I have to say is at this website. If you go to wbcarp.com and you look in the middle of the page, you'll see a link that says to the Parkinson talk. So all the slides, everything. And the other thing I was telling, I want to introduce my wife, Nancy. And, Nancy Irvine, I've known her for how many years? 40? A long time. Her husband taught biochemistry. Of course, I had a PhD in biochemistry, and he taught in the same department as me. At that time, it was called MCG. And the reason why I'm using this mic, because I do have a big mouth, a loud mouth, Brooklyn, but Nancy can only hear in 1 ear, so I'm using the mic for you. So I wanted to talk quickly about two things. The first question, can nutrition or diet play a role in decreasing Parkinson's disease risk or slowing the progression of Parkinson's disease? That's question number one. And question number two, what are the specific nutritional issues with Parkinson's patients? So I'll just be talking about that. So, can you decrease the risk of Parkinson's disease and slow its progression by making changes in your diet or nutrition? There's a lot of urban legends around this. There's a lot of nonsense on Facebook and social media. But here's the answer. The answer is the link between diet and nutrition and Parkinson's disease is weak. You can't take a supplement or eat a food. I know that the Mediterranean diet has gotten a lot of press. It does have an effect, but it's a weak effect. However, your life, the way you live your life, not just diet and nutrition, but the way you move and getting your diabetes, heart disease, stroke risk under control, that actually, your lifestyle, that actually can have a major effect. In fact, I'll show you, June, this is still June, right? Next week is Friday is July 1st. Right, happy 4th. Just this month, a very important study was published showing that as far as dementia is concerned, controlling your lifestyle behavior, that is not just nutrition, but the way you move and getting your diabetes and heart disease risk is much more important in dementia than genetics. That's what they've discovered. Everything, not just nutrition. The link of nutrition itself is weak, and there's not a lot of data to support really going overboard with it. So what's been looked at when it comes to Parkinson's disease? Well, they've looked at everything. They've looked at what we call macronutrients. In other words, is the relationship between carbs, fats, protein, and Parkinson's disease. They've looked at alcohol, beer, looked at the relationship of dairy products to Parkinson's disease, coffee, tea, green tea, all the quackery that's out there in the public domain, it seeps into Parkinson's. Looking at micronutrients, are there any vitamins or minerals, and diet. And all these show basically no effect, none, In other words, there are studies that show alcohol increases your risk of Parkinson's disease. There are studies that show alcohol decreases your risk. There's no conclusion. Same thing with coffee, dairy, micronutrients. The only one that has a slight effect on decreasing your risk is the Mediterranean diet, and what they call it now the MIND diet, because the Mediterranean diet and the DASH diet, the diet against stroke and hypertension, they're basically the same diet, and they put them together, and that's what this is. It's the Mediterranean and DASH diet, which they looked at. So, do unsaturated fat decrease the risk? Not really. No data, no strong data. Alcohol, then uric acid. See, I've been doing research and researching this area since I was 23. So that's a long time. And you know, every time there's a disease with no cure, no known cause or cure, all the quacks jump on the nutrition bandwagon. I've seen this time and time again with so many diseases that turn out to be totally meaningless. You have to know what's causing it. Once they know what's causing Parkinson's disease, then we'll have a cure. This is like blind men stealing an elephant, these things. Green tea, again, the gut flora affect the risk. There are studies that show it does and studies that show it doesn't. All very questionable. So, I mean, the answer is to look at your own risk. And, you know, for example, vitamin D is a good example. Should you take vitamin D supplements with Parkinson's disease? Well, there are studies that show it helps and studies that show it doesn't. However, vitamin D is important for many things. So you should have, at your physical exam, you should know your blood vitamin D levels. And if they're low, then you should take a supplement. And then have it remeasured, and it'll be back in the normal range. So for example, looking at Nancy just blinks, looks at the sun for 1 minute, she turns bright red. I have Mediterranean skin, I tend to tan, which is still not that great. But because Nancy can't go out in the sun, well, I don't want to go out in the sun. I want to be with Nancy. So she ended up having low vitamin D levels, and guess what? I have low vitamin D. So we both have to take vitamin D supplements. So as a good example, what it shows, a number of studies suggest that low levels may be associated with dementia, but the data is inconclusive. But if you're worried about your own or your loved one's vitamin D status, ask your physician to measure blood vitamin D levels at the next visit. And then if they're low, see, based on your own data, I think when people make a mistake with nutrition is they take the general concept and think they apply to their specific individual. You can't take general ideas. So should you take vitamin D supplement? Well, it will depend upon your own vitamin D levels, and you have to have that measured. So if you're worried about the brain, your very best advice, contemporary nutrition advice, is brain health is equal to heart health. And this is the June 2022 study. And this just backs up many, many studies. This is just not 8 studies. But what it shows is that they were looking to see the relationship between stroke, diabetes, heart attack, and dementia risk. And what they showed, and this was the most interesting thing, was that stroke, diabetes, and heart disease was independently associated with the risk of dementia and was an extensive brain imaging differences to a greater extent than with genetic risk. So you can actually overcome, if you come from a family where dementia is an issue, for example, by controlling these factors, you can actually overcome the genetic risk a lot of the time. So here we are. This is your cerebral vascular life, non-modifiable factor. But all these things, your cholesterol, obesity, physical inactivity, smoking, high blood pressure, all these things are modifiable. So here's an example of the brain disease American diet, which is this. This graph, you see here, this is what you should be eating. The goal is this line. This is what you should be eating. This is what you shouldn't be eating. And the limit is this. So when you look at the typical American diet, you see that they are far below eating the things they should eat. I mean, only 15% of the goal for most Americans is being reached for whole grains, for example. But look at the damn fat, salt, saturated fat. You know, all that's the, well, look, you're making your mouth water, is that what it is? The brain disease diet. So the Mediterranean diet really, it's not people think it's, see, kind of agrees with everything I said. It's not a heart diet and a brain diet and a kidney diet and, you know, a backside diet and an ear diet. You don't have to eat your organs. What we know is that we know what a good diet is, and it's good for every living tissue in your body. Your gums, your brain, your toes. So we know you're not supposed to go around eating for your organs. We know what a good diet is. All these guidelines agree. And the Parkinson Foundation, and there is data to show there is an effect on the Mediterranean way of eating, but the effect is all over. It's good for your heart. It's not just good for Parkinson's patients. It's like vitamin D. But I want to make sure you understand that there's a lot of fuss being made about the Mediterranean diet of Parkinson's disease. It's a healthy diet, it's good to eat, but it's very, very small effect on Parkinson's. A lot of hoopla. But your life can have a much bigger effect. So what is at the Mediterranean diet? Well, lots of fruits and vegetables, lots of whole grains. Really, we eat lots, we have lots and lots of fruits and vegetables. Maybe 6 to 11 servings a day. Actually, the serving sizes are very small. So we're not grazing. We're eating good, tasting, delicious food, but we're eating lots of fruits and vegetables. Fish and seafood, stay away from the shrimp if you have a high blood cholesterol. And anyone that attempted to eliminate a food group, forget it. You need all the foods. Having lots of whole milk is not a good idea. Having lots and lots of dairy is not a good idea, but you need dairy in your diet. And if it's at low fat, dairy, yogurts, we use egg substitutes, because my cholesterol, I come from a very high genetic risk family. In fact, everyone in my family dropped dead at about 55, 60, I'm almost 80. And but getting on cholesterol-lowering medication. In fact, one of my brothers, a twin, wouldn't go on cholesterol-lowering medication. He died of a heart attack at 40. His twin brother is doing fine. Lifestyle can make a big difference. So, let me tell you, see this meats? Maybe for your birthday, you can have a hamburger and that's it, This is a very cheap way of eating. When I do the shopping and cooking in the house, and when I go shopping, maybe I'll have one thing of meat. Like I made beef bourguignon for Sunday, and that's I bought some steak. Of course, I looked at the price of steak. I bought lots of tenderizer and lots of cheap steak, pounding it in. Beef bourguignon with mushrooms and onions and a salad and fresh baked bread. But that'll be a meat meal, and half of that meal is frozen. We might have it for my next birthday, who knows. But I'll go up to the cashier, the checkout counter, and the cashier in Publix will say, how did you buy all this food for such a little amount of money? Well, if you look, there's no meat, there's no crap, like, all sorts of drinks and chips and this and that. So here, if I go up to people and give them hugs, if I see them buying fruits and vegetables at Publix, so beware. Usually when I walk into Publix, I hear all the shopping carts racing to the other end of the store.
That's why I shop online.
Oh, I'd be looking at your carts now.
It's funny because that you say this. So quite a few people here know I've lost about just shy of 40 pounds in the past couple months.
That's great.
And I didn't realize that I changed my diet, but it's almost identical to the Mediterranean diet.
Right.
I haven't been following it. Like
Right.
that's not my intent, the Mediterranean diet, but.
And the key, of course, is to eat less. You don't have to pay money to lose weight. It's free. I mean, you look at the ads, it makes you think you have to pay money to lose weight. The diet against the DASH diet, same thing, lots of fruits and vegetables. If you're having protein, some lean protein, make it mainly vegetable protein. I make a mean soy meatball sandwich. Nancy's from New Jersey with a big Italian population. She knows meatball sandwiches. It's fabulous. And lots of whole grains.
And don't tell people that it's vegetarian.
Oh, yeah, never. Oh, no. We never told our kids. They found out, they went into the bathroom and lost the door. This is the diet for stroke and hypertension. And, you see people eating stuff like this all the time. The American Heart Association brain diet, again, if you look, it's the Mediterranean diet. We eat salmon maybe once a week. We have a lot of vegetarian meals that are delicious. We don't even know they're vegetarian. Like we'll have portobello mushroom sandwiches. With portobello mushrooms and onions and peppers and all sorts of good stuff. So what the heck should you focus on for maximum brain health? Should you focus on fats? Should you focus on carbs? Should you focus on calories, fiber, your weight? What should you focus on? Your cholesterol, is it sugar in your diet? Is it salt, sodium? Is it portion size? Is it move? Well, here's the thing, it's all of them. When I look at a nutrition label, I don't look just to see if it's low fat. I look at everything. I look to see how many, is it whole grain, how many grams of fiber, what kind of sodium is in it, what kind of sugar. I look at everything. I guess what I'm saying is that good nutrition is just not a little factoid you hear on TV. It's everything. So I do have some issues with the expert recommendations of the Parkinson Foundation. This is from them. They encourage direct fresh fruit, fresh vegetables, nuts and seeds, non-fried food. I'm very happy. Olive oil, I'm very happy. Coconut oil, nuts. Coconut oil is highly saturated. I have been nutritionist. Wine, again, the idea that you would recommend drinking wine in any way related to Parkinson's disease is loco a capita. Fresh herbs, I love it. So I love this, I love that, I love that. And then I have issues with this. See, I'm talking to you from a nutrition science point of view, not from being politically correct or whatever. We use canned fruits and canned vegetables all the time. I mean, we prefer fresh or frozen. But for example, if I'm making black bean soup, I'm not going to boil beans for a day and a half. You know, we use canned beans, but I have a strainer. I just do this automatically. I empty it into the strainer, hold it under water, and rinse off all the crap. And then I use the black beans. And fruit, now there's a lot of fresh fruit, but I do use this. For example, if I want to bring something to a party, like tonight, if I had wanted to bring something, I would have brought sauce of black bean sauce. Remember, canned black beans, rinse sauce, canned corn, sauce, kind of fresh cilantro, scallions, tomato, red and green pepper, fajita seasoning. Ooh, I should have brought that. Next time. But the idea to avoid, I go along with fried food, avoid that, absolutely. Soda, but there's no reason to eliminate here. Do not eliminate a food group. And you don't have to eliminate these, but you should eat less. It's cheaper anyway. And if you make them, for example, if we decide to have pork, I will buy lean pork chops, not heavenly ham. Lean pork chop, and then in the summer, I love it, I serve peaches stuffed, pork chop stuffed with peaches. Delicious. With a salad. Delicious. Frozen vegetables, they're a good thing. And this idea that you're getting Parkinson's disease from drinking out of plastic bottles, that's in the same category. So looking at this, I think this is good. See, where did this come from? This is where it came from. First of all, let you look at coconut oil. It is 65% saturated fat. And I just got done saying that controlling your heart disease risk and stroke risk will decrease dementia. So here's these expert briefings, it says, here are the two options. Tell patients do nothing until there is complete placebo-controlled randomized clinical trial of diet and progression. And honestly, that's called medical science. Scientists are extremely, we doubt everything, everything. That's the first thing you learn, doubt everything. You don't do anything unless there's data, and the data has to be from different laboratories. It has to be using different models, and everything agrees, not just a study. That's what you see on a lot of these supplements, a study. But this is what I put this here. This is what I would advise. This is what they advise. Advise people, the currently available evidence suggests diet is associated with greater progression. Eat more fresh fruits, nuts and seeds, this is good. Not coconut oil, not wine, not green tea, that's just quack, quack, quack. And avoid these. You should limit there and have low fat, but there's no reason to eliminate food group. So, this is what a medical scientist wants you to do, not this. So here we are. You know what the painting this is? Huh? Yes, and who painted it? Botticelli. Are you an art major? Huh? Or you've been to Las Vegas. Have you been to Las Vegas? Las Vegas in the Bellagio Hotel, they had 12,000 different versions of this painting hanging on the wall. Some of them are very funny, like Minnie Mouse is coming out of the show. So look, here's what you have to imagine. Imagine that I'm this beautiful baby, and I'm coming out of the shell. I'm emerging. And once I emerge, I don't say that it will, I suggest. And I don't suggest it does, I suggest it may. 3 steps away from science. Wishful thinking. This is not an Oprah show. You don't base your life on wish. Even Oprah says wishful thinking is not a plan. Remember she used to say that? What about all those brain supplements? Can you decrease your risk of dementia, reverse or slow progression by taking dietary supplements? Again, wishful thinking. Emerging, suggesting it may. Look on these supplements. They all have this statement. This statement has not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration. This product is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease. What does that mean? It's on every supplement bottle. It means there's no evidence to show that the claims are true. By the way, how can they sell this stuff if it's not true? How did that happen? What happened? Well, what happened in 1970? Drugs have to be approved by the FDA, and foods have to be monitored by the USDA. But there was billions and billions of dollars in supplement industry. They lobbied their Congress directly, bypassing NIH, the National Institutes of Health. They got Congress to pass a political group of substances called dietary supplements that are neither classified as food or drugs. And that's how that happened. And that's why you see all this advertising. So, if there is a genetic risk in your family, it's important for you to change your lifestyle. It's important and to facilitate cultural change. You know, because if you have the risk, Your great-grandkids or grandkids or children have this risk too. So they need to realize that it's a family thing. And you need to model behavior. And here we are. Move, move, move. And control diabetes, obesity, heart disease. These are the modifiable risk factors, and the data shows that it's not just lip service. They are very important. And I think what you have to realize as matriarchs or patriarchs of your family, you need to model behavior and get that cultural change. I know when our kids want recipes and stuff, we always make sure, the recipes we get from people, we always change to be healthier and before we pass them on. And we try them out to make sure they taste the same. So here's overall obesity. Do you realize it's the first time in history more people in this country are obese or overweight than our normal weight? 70% of Americans are obese or overweight. 70%. Here's the physical activity map. Standing relationship, duh. So what are some of these specific patient nutrition issues? And I think what you know is that Parkinson patients are a very varied group of people that react very differently to everything. You have to really individualize it. Even to medications like L-Dopa, supposed to be taken on an empty stomach, while some patients get upset stomach. You know, you have to modify everything for an individual. Individualize. And they should be based on evidence, medical evidence, not just wishful suggestions. So, for example, Parkinson patients may eat less and lose weight because the swallowing, the nausea, movement symptoms that makes it difficult to eat. And in fact, this points out the difference between being overweight may cause Parkinson's, but people with Parkinson's who are underweight, they need the calories. It's the opposite. They need the calories. So in Parkinson's patients with dementia, it's a cycle. Malnutrition may trigger a cycle leading to decreased nutrition intake, deterioration of nutrition status, and that it's a cycle. So it's important to break the cycle. Sarcopenia is muscle wasting. Muscle wasting. So adding extra calories. Now how do you do this? Well, you know, you might serve mini meals, more frequent smaller meals, higher fat foods. But just make sure the fats are healthy fat. So for example, you'd be amazed at how many calories you can add by taking some olive oil and vegetables and going like that. See that? That's 300 calories. Fat is very fattening. If you need to gain weight, eating high-fat foods, healthy fat. Using liquid supplements, we're taking out your blender, adding spices, and moving a lot of times stimulates appetite. So here are some suggestions about limiting distractions, away from television, other distractions, keeping the table setting simple. So that, of course, it depends on the patient, depends upon the severity of the disease, the stage. They did an interesting study. They used red plates and to distinguish the food from the plate, and of course the food temperature. So for example, using red dinnerware, what they found, the contrast led to a 25% increase in food intake, 84% in liquid intake, using the high contrast red and white, and just white. The idea is that some simple environmental manipulations can increase food and liquid intake in frail patients. Serve only 1 or 2 foods at a time. Food preferences, they may be long-standing or they may change. So you have to be flexible with the food, as you who are dealing with Parkinson's disease know. Give the person plenty of time to eat. Remind them to chew and swallow carefully. It may take an hour or longer to finish eating. Eating together. Well, one nice thing, for example, about Brandon was congregate eating. You're not eating by yourself. Very important. And if the person doesn't remember, if the person says, when am I having breakfast, when you just ate breakfast, give them another breakfast. Go with the flow. Adapting serving dishes, utensils, and using finger food. All these things I'm sure you've thought about. The watch me technique, holding a spoon and showing a person how to eat a bowl of cereal, and of course the neatness factor. Plates with suction cups, no spilled glasses. I'm sure many of you know this better than I do. And prepare foods that aren't hard to chew or swallow. Grind them, cut them into bite-sized pieces, serve soft food. And of course, learn the Heimlich maneuver and look for signs of choking. Limit alcohol and caffeine, particularly before bed. And using liquid supplements or taking out the blender and making your own supplements, your own liquids. What it is these commercially available liquid supplements, usually, as a rule, each serving has 250 calories and eats a quarter of the RDAs, or vitamins and minerals. So 4 a day, for example, would be 1,000 calories and 100% the vitamin mineral recommendation. One thing is that keeping it cold, pouring it over ice, not just taking it out of the can, room temperature. So for example, a typical liquid supplement, this is Ensure, but there are many on the market. It has about 220 calories, and you notice it contains a quarter of the daily values for vitamins and minerals. I think the big thing is there are people out there who can help. The number one person, the registered dietitian. Don't just go to a nutritionist. Did you know in Georgia the term nutritionist is not legally protected? Any idiot can call themselves a nutritionist. But the term registered dietitian nutritionist is a legally protected term. You need to have a certain education, you need to be continuing education, you need to meet state and federal requirements. So not everyone can call themselves a registered dietitian nutritionist. So look for that, RDN, not just nutritionist. They have a BS in Foods and Nutrition. They've done an internship. We have to have an internship at Augusta University. They pass a national registry exam. administered by the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics. We have actually the president of the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics living in Richmond County, Donna Martin. And remember when Michelle Obama came to look at the kids growing the vegetable garden in Waynesboro? That was Donna's doing. And she's been on the White House Advisory Committee. Nutrition, registered dietitian nutritionist licensed in the state. OTs. They can evaluate a patient and suggest assisted eating devices. For example, a rocker knife, weighing utensil. So these are all people that should be on your team. You're not alone. Universal cup, cups with lids and straws, rubber mats that prevent sliding. I mean, Nancy is a geriatric physical therapist, and you work with occupational therapists.
There was just one in here before everybody came in.
Oh, who was?
Dana.
Oh, Dana. And they can be very helpful when it comes to adaptive eating devices.
And, vision problems, because a lot of times, you don't think about it, but the sugar glasses on when you eat, the person doesn't see exactly clearly, they should be wearing glasses. Don't think about that. Come to dinner and don't bother with it unless really, especially Parkinson's disease, you need to wear glasses.
And then I know Nancy's a big user of speech language pathology, especially for swallowing issues.
They can do a lot of surroundings. Anybody who has a loved one that has swallowing problems, really dependency in speech language pathologist, you need to present, they can do exercises, they can do stimulation, they can do bearing and swallowing.
Bearing and swallowing.
They can do a lot.
And see, people don't think about it. So these are definitely people that should be on a healthcare team when it comes to Parkinson's disease. The way you sit or hold your head when you eat, the strategies to make it swallow better and safer, eating softer foods, putting thickeners in drinks to help you swallow.
I just want to say too, both Angie and Dana are both OTs, and they're happy to kind of share resources and direct you in the right direction. Obviously,
Have they spoken to this group?
so Angie is the vice president of the board, and Dana is our research chair, which is a
Have you
fancy.
spoken to this group? Yeah. I said, that's why you're here the Thursday. The fluoroscope Barron swallowing test. Don't forget the dentist. You know, the dentures, there are lots of oral health issues that prevent people from eating correctly. And mental health professionals treating anxiety or depression. So I guess what I came here to tell you is this. In terms of nutrition, a diet to prevent or delay Parkinson's disease, there ain't any. However, there is some data to show that the Mediterranean diet can have a slight effect, but it's a healthy diet and good for your heart, good for your vasculature. It's just an overall healthy diet, and it's much cheaper to eat that way too. And in terms of when you think of nutrition and Parkinson's disease, then think of the individual patient, and each patients really are what we call heterogeneous group. Well, you know, what is the group of humans that are most like each other? Which humans are most like each other? Babies. babies. Term newborn babies, now premature babies have different needs. Term newborn babies, they all are very similar to each other. And then as they grow up, and as they smoke, or as they get obese, or as they get high blood, by the time you end up being 80, you're quite different from each other. And one 80-year-old, I mean, we see this all the time. 80-year-old can look like they're ready to die tomorrow. Another one is riding a bike on the Augusta Canal. So as you get older, you get more dislike everyone else, depending upon your life, how you live your life. So with Parkinson's patients, they're very, very different group of people, and you really have to individualize their suggestions. And there are things you can do nutritionally in terms of helping solve their nutritional problem, depending upon the issues with Parkinson's disease. And you're not alone, so look around for help. Should I shut up now?
We can open the floor for questions.
Oh, yeah. Good recipes. This is a great question. And I can't begin to tell you that you don't have to buy a book. See, the diabetic diet and the heart diet, they are the Mediterranean diet. If you go to the American Heart Association website, heart.org, and in fact, I have a recipe book on this. If you go to wbkarp.com and look in the middle of the page, you'll see the link to this talk. And on that website are my recipes. And you know, I call it feng shui cooking, because to me, things have to really look, smell, besides being nutritious. It has to be an overall experience. Ask Nancy, I'm always creating pictures on plates. When I put down a plate at the table, it looks like a painting. How many times I say, look at that, beautiful, all those colors, and I arrange it a certain way. I call it feng shui cooking. But anyway, I have recipes on my website. The diabetes.org have great recipes. The American eatright.org. All this is on the web, all those websites, everything is there. Because my idea is, what can you learn in an hour? I can't learn a damn thing. But learning how to learn, that's the key. So that's what the resources are. And you know, next week, if you have a question, you can email me. Or you can share my Facebook page. Or you can read the columns. I answer immediately. I love questions. I'm one of these people that have a need to know. Anything that comes up, I look up, or I answer people's questions all the time. So I'm hoping to give you resources. And I can be a resource for you in the future. Even when I drop dead, I'm going to take my laptop up with me. You know, I'm a real computer person. You know, when computer people die, they don't see their life flash in front of their eyes. They see their life scroll. That's a good question. Check out the heart side, the diabetes side, my website. You don't have to buy a book. The what? Meatballs. Well, you know what I do is I just go buy frozen soy. What is the brand? There's a whole brand of vegetarian meat in Publix. Look, soy meatballs. And you know, when they first began, this stuff tasted awful, awful. It tastes good now. Oh, I always, and then because I run out to our vegetables, I run out to our garden, I pick oregano, I pick thyme, I pick basil, I chop it up, throw it in I make my own spaghetti sauce, save some of that with a meatball sandwich and yeah, it's worth trying. We love portobello mushrooms too. Try that. We have a lot of vegetarian meals. What's another vegetarian? We have lots, maybe four a week. Yes.
We hear a lot nowadays about gut health, and the impact that gut health has.
Right.
It's how about how does nutrition affect that and therefore.
Right. And in fact, one of the, Nancy and I have had our 2 COVID shots, our 2 boosters. We got COVID twice. And the last time was a while ago, several months ago. But we started having these weird things. So one of the weird things is GI problem, diarrhea. Oh, we had to go for a chest X-ray. This is months after, while we were negative, and months after we had COVID. But that was all clear, but we had this weird call. There are a lot of things going on that we will eventually figure out. But the best way of having normal gut health is to eat normal food, not to take supplements. There are some people who need supplements, specific individuals with specific medical needs. For example, if you're on antibiotics for a prolonged period of time, you sterilize your GI tract. But for regular old people, the way of having normal gut health is to eat your normal diet. And in fact, what data shows is that when you have diarrhea, there are no foods you should avoid. You play it by ear. If you don't want to eat it, don't. But the best way of getting back your normal GI flora is by eating the normal food you always eat. And now the big quackery is, besides probiotics, you've seen the prebiotics. You know what another word for prebiotics is? Fiber. Prebiotics is just bacteria need fiber. So prebiotics are fiber, which you can get from fruits and vegetables. Peaches, have lots of fiber. Pears, whole grain foods. So there's a lot of, on that list of all the things that were examined, probiotics is one of them. The data is iffy. Some studies show it helps, some studies show it doesn't. Basically, it's inconclusive. And if it does have an effect, it's very minor. But there are a category of patients that may have a medical need for probiotics, and that's totally different. But you don't make money by selling probiotics to 3 people who medically need them. You make money by selling them to 200 million people who don't need them. But that's a good question. What else? What's that? Oh,
No, none right now.
do you have questions? So, well, I want to tell you, thank you for coming. I'm hoping we'll get long enough that the rain will stop. And feel free to contact me in the future. Go to my website and email me with questions. If I use you, I'm going to write, the column I'm writing next month is I always get questions and then I write columns on the questions, but I change the name and the location to keep the people anonymous. So I think this one says, is there any relationship between, Dick's asked, I heard that Mediterranean diet prevent is true, that is the whole conversation.
Well, thank you all for joining us tonight. I wanted to present you with
Wow.
which is, I mean, timely. Thank you for joining us and speaking.
Exactly.
They each have their own.
I like sharing. It's more jazz.
Yeah, thank you for joining us again. I did want to have a couple announcements. So if y'all don't know, and those who join via Zoom, I'm Logan Banks, I'm the president of the board. We have our pop-up coming up the first Saturday of October. We have formed a committee and started the planning. So if anybody wants to hop on board and just dip their toe into kind of the organized piece of our group, we're happy to have you in any capacity, whether it's volunteering on the day of or helping through the whole planning process. So feel free to reach out to me for that. Also, if you have a suggested speaker, we're always looking for someone as well. We love having There you go. There you go.
Okay, I wanted to say, let me give a plug in for jazz. On July 16th, I'm going to be appearing at the Bordeaux restaurant. Now, let me tell you about the Bordeaux. It's in Thompson, Georgia. You say, what kind of restaurant is in Thompson, Georgia? It's 20 minutes from here. It's the main Thompson exit. What happened is that Mark Herbert, who built Herbert Homes, he purchased this old winery. It's right near I-20. So when you get off the I-20 exit, Thompson exit, it's right there. And anyway, he's built this restaurant that will knock your socks off. Mike Seaver, who's the interior design guy, he decorated the whole thing. It is so beautiful, and I'll be there July 16th for an evening of jazz, drinks, and food. And you can, actually, they do have vegetarian dishes too, because that's what Nancy does. But they do have mainly steak and seafood and stuff like that. So if you're looking, you have a significant other? Okay, you need a romantic evening at the Bordeaux restaurant in Thompson. Look it up, it's neat. Oh, in fact, if you go to the website, when you go to wbcarp.com, on the right is the jazz, on the left is the nutrition, and in the middle is the link to your Parkinson's talk.
You always keep it interesting.
I wanted to mention, for a lot of people, so they can't go to the mall or, just not able to do a lot of other things. We need door prizes too. You go to a favorite restaurant, getting a gift card. Go to like Carolina Pottery, get them to donate a wreath. There's ways that everybody in this room can help. We can't just be our little group, sort of formal group of people. Every one of you has a way that you can help a lot. Really appreciate it.
And I promise we're not one of those groups that's, constantly fundraising. We do one fundraiser a year and try and make it as big and as special as possible because Parkinson's in our local community is important to us. So thank you all for coming via Zoom, via Facebook Live, whatever other way you're watching this. Thank you for everyone who stuck it out through the rain if you got stuck in it. And we will be here next month back again. And I'm here with any questions. The rest of us are available as well. Angie and Dana will be on the exit if you have OT questions. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Thanks.
To stop this.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr.